The doctors gathered outside her room in a solemn circle, their whispers carrying the weight of finality. Sarah Chen had 72 hours left. Maybe less. The rare autoimmune disease that had silently ravaged her body over the past 6 months had reached a critical threshold, and the experimental treatment that might have saved her was never going to arrive in time. Her father, billionaire tech entrepreneur Michael Chen, had already moved heaven and earth, literally flying specialists from around the world, offering hospitals any sum of money if they could just buy a few more days, a few more chances. But money, for the first time in his entire life, couldn't purchase what he needed most: time itself. Sarah lay in the sterile hospital room on the 42nd floor of Manhattan Medical, watching the city lights flicker to life as evening descended. She was only 23 years old. The injustice of it felt suffocating, worse than the labored breathing that had become her constant companion. Through the massive windows, she could see the Empire State Building glowing amber against the darkening sky. And she thought about all the dreams she'd had standing in places like this, imagining her future. She wanted to travel, to fall in love, to write the novel she'd started but never finished, to make a difference in the world somehow. Instead, she would become a statistic, another young life claimed by the randomness of human biology. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of human connection, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to this channel. This story is about to show you that miracles can come from the most unexpected places. Her father sat in the chair beside her bed, looking older than she'd ever seen him. Michael Chen had built an empire from nothing, had faced countless business opponents and crushed them all, had never met a problem he couldn't solve with strategy and wealth. But watching his daughter slip away was dismantling something fundamental inside him. He held her hand, careful not to disturb the IV lines, and whispered promises he couldn't keep. Apologies for not spending more time with her before this happened. Regrets that poured out like blood from an open wound. 3 blocks away from the hospital, Marcus Washington sat on the cold concrete steps behind an abandoned building, sharing a single cup of hot coffee with his friend Dante. At 17, Marcus had already lived more hardship than most people experience in a lifetime. His mother had died when he was 8, his father had never been in the picture, and Child Protective Services had rotated him through 7 different foster homes before he aged out of the system at 16. Now he lived on the streets, working odd jobs for cash, stealing when he had to, surviving moment by moment. His clothes were worn through at the elbows, his shoes held together with duct tape. And his smile, the rare times he smiled, revealed teeth that hadn't seen a dentist since childhood. But Marcus had something that no amount of money could guarantee: an unwavering belief in the goodness of people. Despite everything the world had taken from him, despite every adult who had let him down, he still stopped to help old women cross the street. He still gave his portion of food to the younger homeless kids. He still believed that compassion was the most valuable currency that existed. Dante thought he was crazy for holding on to hope, for working at the shelter 3 days a week without pay, for volunteering at the community center when he could be sleeping. But Marcus knew something Dante didn't, that his humanity was the only thing no one could ever steal from him. The next morning, Sarah's condition worsened dramatically. Her body was shutting down, the pain becoming so intense that the morphine barely touched it. The doctors increased her sedation, and Michael sat watch like a broken guardian angel, praying to a God he'd stopped believing in decades ago. He would have traded everything, his entire fortune, his company, his reputation, for just 1 year more with his daughter. He thought about the childhood he'd been too busy building his empire to fully experience with her, the homework sessions he'd skipped, the school plays he'd missed because there was always another deal to close, another milestone to reach. Success had cost him everything that actually mattered, and he was only realizing it now when it was too late. That same morning, Marcus was helping at the soup kitchen when he overheard 2 volunteers talking about a young woman upstairs in the hospital who was dying. A girl with everything but nothing. A billionaire's daughter who couldn't buy her way out of the darkness. Something stirred inside Marcus. A pull, almost instinctive. A feeling he couldn't quite name. He found himself asking the shelter director if he could volunteer at the hospital. if they needed anyone to help with the patients. Within hours, he was given a volunteer badge and a gray uniform that hung loosely on his thin frame, and he was walking through the gleaming halls of Manhattan Medical, a ghost in a place where everyone else seemed to belong. He wasn't supposed to go to the private floors, and he certainly wasn't supposed to approach the intensive care rooms. But something inside him moved him forward, an invisible thread pulling him through the corridors. Past security checkpoints, he somehow slipped through, until he found himself standing outside a room where he could see a young woman lying motionless, surrounded by machines that beeped with mechanical heartbeats. Her father sat beside her, head in his hands, and Marcus could feel the man's despair radiating outward like heat from a dying fire. What happened next wasn't planned. Marcus simply walked into that room, his heart pounding, his hands trembling slightly. Michael Chen looked up, confused and slightly angry at the intrusion, but something about the young man's eyes stopped him from calling security. They were eyes that had seen suffering, that understood loss, that held a kind of wisdom that transcended age or privilege. Marcus walked to Sarah's bedside and simply sat in the empty chair, not saying anything, just being present in the room with this family drowning in sorrow. And then, very quietly, he began to sing. He sang an old spiritual his mother had taught him as a child, a song about hope and redemption and light breaking through darkness. His voice was raw and untrained, but achingly sincere, each note carrying the weight of his own pain and survival, his own impossible journey through a world that had tried to break him. Something in that moment shifted. Michael stopped resisting the stranger's presence and found himself listening. And Sarah, in her medicated haze, seemed to respond, her breathing becoming slightly more steady, her agitated movements stilling. For the next 2 days, Marcus came to that hospital room. He brought books and read to Sarah, not knowing if she could hear him but reading anyway. He told stories about his life, about the shelter kids who had become his family, about why he believed that every single human being was capable of extraordinary kindness. He sat with Michael through the long nights, and the billionaire found himself talking to this street kid about things he'd never shared with anyone. His fears, his failures, his terrible regret. And Marcus, who had so little, gave generously of the only thing he truly possessed: his presence, his compassion, his refusal to surrender to despair. On the morning of what was supposed to be Sarah's last day, something miraculous happened. The new experimental medication arrived. It turned out there had been a clerical error at the research facility, and the shipment that was supposed to go to Singapore had been rerouted. A doctor who had been following Sarah's case saw the opportunity and made arrangements to have it rushed over. The probability was astronomically small. Against all odds, all medical prognosis, it worked. Within hours, Sarah's vital signs began to stabilize. Within days, she was conscious and aware. Within weeks, she was recovering. But the real miracle wasn't the medication. The real miracle was that Sarah had found a reason to fight that went beyond her own survival. During her recovery, as her strength slowly returned, she learned about Marcus's life, about the kids living on the streets, about the broken foster system that had abandoned him. And something crystallized inside her, a purpose, a burning need to make a difference in the world. Her father, transformed by watching his daughter choose compassion even in the face of death, dedicated his entire fortune to social reform. Together, Sarah and Michael established a foundation that has since helped thousands of homeless youth, funded shelters, reformed foster care systems, and created opportunities where there had been only despair. Marcus was offered scholarships, a job in the foundation, a chance at the life he'd only dreamed of. But more importantly, he learned what he'd always known deep in his soul: that the smallest acts of kindness can change the world, that sometimes the richest people are those with nothing but hope to give, and that miracles aren't about luck or medication or money. They're about human beings choosing to see each other, really see each other, and refusing to let each other face the darkness alone. If this story touched your heart, if you felt the power of human connection and the impossible made possible through kindness, please engage with this video. Like it, leave a comment, share it with someone who needs to hear this story. Your engagement helps us continue bringing stories that remind us of our shared humanity. Please comment below and tell us, what does kindness mean to you? How has someone's compassion changed your life? We want to hear your story. The epilogue to this tale is written not in the past, but in the present. Sarah recovered fully and now runs the foundation alongside Marcus, who has become not just an employee but a brother. Every day, they work to ensure that no one else has to face their darkest moments alone, that the street kids and forgotten souls of the world know that someone sees them, that someone cares. Marcus often says that he was never the one who saved Sarah. She was the one who saved him. By reminding him that the impossible becomes possible when we choose to believe in each other, when we choose love over fear, when we choose to be the miracle for someone else.